Hello my lovely students, and welcome to the next topic for the OCR GCSE Classical Civilisation, Myth and Religion, Heracles or Hercules. Heracles is the Greek version of Hercules, and they are both the universal hero worshipped by Greeks and Romans alike as in fact a god. So we're going to start off with Heracles, the Greek version. So first of all, we're going to look at his birth, childhood and education. And a note on the spelling. You can spell it with a C or a K. It's absolutely fine either way. So first of all, you're going to be making notes on how he came to be born. There's a good story there. What he was like growing up. And what was special about his education. So next to each thing that you jot down in bullet points, think about how he's portrayed by each of these details. So what does his interesting birth story tell us about him or make us think about him? What was the way he grew up like and how he was educated like in terms of making him who he became? So how was he portrayed to us as a hero or as a clever, insightful, special young man? You will use, if you've got it at home, the Bloomsbury Textbook, but mostly for now you'll use the GreekMythComix slides that I made for you earlier, which are on the next few slides. First of all, we're going to look at the life and times of Heracles, and for a slightly less fuzzy version that has come up unfortunately on the video, you can see the whole set of comics about his life that I've made at the website. But I just picked out some certain sections here to clarify the most important things you need to know about him. So first of all, or rather second, you can look at what happened before the conception on the website if you like, but let's just get straight to the point. His father, Amphitryon, defeated a guy called Heracles, and Heracles had been betrayed by his daughter Comitho by pulling out Heracles' magical hair, which stopped him from dying, because she was so in love with Amphitryon. Little does she know that he's in love with someone else altogether. Meanwhile, Amphitryon's wife, Alcmene, whom he has married, and then before he's allowed to consummate the marriage with her, she says, you go off immediately now and, what's the word? When you avenge my 7 brothers who died at the hands of Heracles. And he's like, fine. So he's gone off. Meanwhile, a guy who looks just like Amphitryon, note he's kind of glowing yellow there, that's a hint that it's not really him, says, I'm back from avenging your 7 brothers. So let's consummate the marriage. And they do. And in fact, it's not Amphitryon, it's Zeus. Zeus came in Amphitryon's shape and bedded Alcmene first, before she bedded her husband. And while she's probably thinking, gosh, he got here pretty quickly, and he's telling her all about the magical adventures that actually Amphitryon's has had, Zeus makes the sun and moon move so slowly that one night becomes 3. And that's actually quite romantic, really. And compared to Zeus's previous encounters with mortal women, this is more romance than rape whilst in disguise, which he normally does. For example, Europa, he is a bull and steals her away from her family, and then possibly consummates with her as an eagle, which is just ew. Leda famously couples with Zeus while he is a swan, and Danae, he couples with her as a golden shower, which a golden shower of light, rain, not entirely sure. In any case, Alcmene is therefore shown to be special. And why is she so special? Because she's incorruptible. She is perfect. She is beautiful and wise, and she is so perfect, beautiful and wise that she is the exact person to bear a son strong enough to protect both gods and mortals from destruction. And most of the myths say that Alcmene was Zeus's last mortal lover. So that does make her special, and thus it makes Heracles, her son, special. Then the real Amphitryon, let's not forget about him, returns. And that's a bit confusing. And later, when they finally have consummated, at least with her, and she says, well, I don't need to hear all your stories because you told me yesterday, he's a bit like, oh, that's confusing. Oh dear. Oh my God, my wife has slept with someone else. And so he says, right, I'm going to see Tiresias the seer. Now, this is a very famous character in a lot of Greek drama. The seer Tiresias is blind. He's had a run-in with Hera, but it actually goes back to Zeus. Zeus has come to Amphitryon, incredibly wise, and said, Amphitryon, my wife won't tell me the answer to this question. Who enjoys sex more, men or women? Tiresias says, well, I don't know, I'm not a woman. And so Zeus turns him into a woman, and he lives as a woman for a year. And at the end of that year, he turns him back into his original self and says, Tiresias, who enjoys sex more, men or women? And Tiresias says, women, actually. And Hera is so cross because she was using that as a way to get round Zeus that she blinds Tiresias. But he gets given the gift of being able to sort of look into the future and say what's actually the reality of the situation. So Tiresias is this very special man. Amphitryon consults him, and he actually finds out that it's not any man who has bedded Alcmene, it is Zeus. And apparently Amphitryon is so sad and so worried because, you can't just go around sleeping with the same people Zeus does, that he never sleeps with Alcmene again. And that is a pretty sad way for your marriage to continue. In any case, nature has taken its course. There are 2 babies in Alcmene's womb. This is a real thing. It is called heteropaternal superfecundity, other father, very fertile. It means a woman has had 2 eggs in her womb and both have been fertilised either by one man, but here by 2 separate men. So there's one baby that is her husband's and one baby that is not her husband's. And we shall see which is which. The birth of Heracles. Zeus is bragging that his son was going to be born today and he's going to be High King. Someone of his bloodline is going to be born today, is going to be High King. And Hera is upset about this because yet another mortal brat is being born to her husband, who isn't really meant to be going around having brats with mortal women, and so she's very, very jealous. So she tricks Zeus. Go on then, swear an oath that the next prince born to the house of Perseus will be High King. Fine, says Zeus, thus it shall be. Stupid woman, always moaning. But Hera had a plan. She made Arte, which is the deification of blind folly, stupidity without thinking, the daughter of Zeus, and Eris, another goddess, the goddess of strife, also known as the one who dropped the golden apple into the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, and that whole, Trojan War thing happened, hide her intentions from Zeus. So basically, Zeus is sort of blinded by Arte, so he doesn't know what's going on, because obviously she's clearly trying to trap him. Hera then went to Nicippe, wife of Slenus, and Slenus had exiled Amphitryon and taken the crown. Again, read more comics if you want to know more about them. And although Nicippe was only 7 months pregnant, Hera made her birth pains come early. So poor old Nicippe goes into premature labour. Next, Hera goes to Alcmene. She's been looking at the family tree of the house of Perseus and seen that it's not only this particular child, the child of Alcmene, that's better to be born, but Nicippe's child too. So while Alcmene has actually gone into labour, Hera, who, despite the fact that she is married to a man who she seems to barely ever sleep with, she's actually goddess of marriage and she's goddess of childbirth. That said, there is a god who is childbirth, and that is Eileithyia. So she gets Eileithyia to sit with her legs crossed and with her arms crossed across the door of Alcmene's bedroom. And this is meant to symbolically prevent the baby's imminent arrival. So just imagine, she's gone into labour and nothing's happening except endless contractions, because this works. Eileithyia is childbirth personified. And if she wants to stop that childbirth on Hera's behalf, it's going to happen. Can you see what Hera's plan is? That night, while Nicippe gives birth very prematurely to a son in Argos, unfortunately for Alcmene, she does not give birth to her son and she continues in labour. And Zeus is very confused because that's not what he promised would happen. It's not the right baby. But he can't go back on his word now. He's made that promise. Finally, Heracles is born. Alcmene's handmaiden, Galinthas, somehow spotted Eileithyia and tricked her by saying a son has been born, thinking maybe she'll leave if she thinks it's actually true. And Eileithyia, having found out that in fact it wasn't true, punished Galinthas for tricking her by turning her into a polecat. Again, the gods aren't really that fair. So, Zeus, realising he had been blinded by Arte, it's in the name, Zeus, come on, throws Arte down to the mortal realm so that blind folly can now only affect humans. And Zeus is angry, so Hera promised that, okay, Heracles would not always be in servitude to the son of Sthenelus, and they talk terms. So, Heracles is a baby. He and his twin brother, Iphicles, are both babies, funnily enough, but you can rather see the difference between them. The twins had been born, but Alcmene was uneasy, and so she made a grave decision. She exposed her baby Alcaeus. By the way, he wasn't called Heracles when he was born, because Heracles means glory of Hera. I'm going to find out where that name comes from later. Going back to this, she exposed the baby outside the city of Thebes. Now, this was unfortunately done more often than we'd probably like to think. This is where you leave the baby outside the city walls, and thus you are not claiming it as your own. And you leave it there to die of natural causes. So basically, it's going to die of cold, it's going to die of hypothermia, it's going to die of exposure, it's going to die of being maybe eaten by a creature. Basically, if it dies out there, its fate was to die. And thus that absolves you from killing your child. You haven't killed it, you just haven't actually accepted it, and it has died of natural causes. So this is an interesting thing to do. I'm sorry, my child, she says, I fear the vengeance of Hera, queen of the heavens, because you are the child of Zeus, and I'm not really meant to have had sex with Zeus. Zeus the father will guide you now. By putting the baby out here, she kind of leaves it up to the gods to decide what to do with it. Zeus sees what's happened and gets Athene to help him. So Athene says, oh, Hera, do you want to take a walk? I hear Thebes is nice this time of year. And they go for a little walk outside Thebes. And Athene points out, oh, look, there's this poor baby outside. And Hera doesn't know whose baby this is. It's, oh, no, poor baby. And because she's god of being married and god of childbirth, she's sort of god of being a mother as well. So Athene suggests, oh, poor child, it's very hungry. Why don't you feed it? So this is somewhat appropriate. She's able to feed the child. And so she exposes her breast in order to feed the child. And the baby Alcaeus, who will become Hercules, sucked so hard that Hera went, ow, and threw the baby away, and a little splash of milk goes up into the heavens. True story, it creates the Milky Way. I didn't make that up, I promise. Fun fact, the ancient Greek name for the Milky Way, Galaxias Kyklos, is derived from the Greek word for milk, gala, and it means milky circle. So it does sort of look like someone has accidentally sprayed milk across the sky. Hera realised she'd been tricked. Her milk had also potentially made Alcaeus immortal in lots of versions of this story, especially as he's already half immortal, having been born with Zeus. So I'm going to get Zeus for this and his son. And Athene picks up the baby and returns the baby to Alcmene to be looked after. The gods have spoken. And thus Alcaeus is now apparently renamed Heracles, which means glory of Hera. In other versions of the story, this again comes later, or it might even just be a title given to him because of, again, what happens later. Alcmene feeds her twins, she puts them down to sleep, and she apparently put them to bed in a shield that Amphitryon had won from Teralaus. Fine bed for princes, it says in my translation from Robert Graves. You can imagine it probably rocked quite nicely. And on Olympus, Zeus is like, so you're all right with the whole like Heracles thing now? Yes, I'm fine with it, says Hera. But she's not. She's having very, very serpenty thoughts. At midnight, she sends down 2 serpents to kill baby Alcaeus in his cradle. Amphitryon and Alcmene were woken by screams, but they discover that baby Alcaeus, or baby Heracles, has in fact killed the serpents, strangling them with his bare hands. This is a week-old baby who probably doesn't actually have any ability to grip anything. So that immediately marks Heracles out as being not just any baby. He is stronger, larger, more special than any other child. You wouldn't really want to be his twin now, would you? Alcmene consulted Tiresias, who we heard about before, because she's a bit worried now. Things are happening that are somewhat out of control. And this is in some versions where he says, in fact, Hera sent these snakes and your boy killed the snakes, and so now your son will be known as Heracles, famous for his feats of strength and bravery. And he gives her a 4-point plan for disposing of the snakes in a way that's going to stop any further miasma. My goodness, that's how bad this situation has got, that it needs that much purification. Heracles grows up and he is educated by some of the finest talents in Greece. Don't ask what happens to his brother. His brother probably has the same education, but for some reason, probably because he's probably not the son of Zeus, he doesn't really get a mention, which is kind of sad. So Heracles has his father Amphitryon to teach him charioteering. He has Castor, the mortal brother of Pollux. They are known as the Dioscuri of Zeus with Leda. They are the children that came out of the eggs when Leda was raped by Zeus as a swan. And their sister is Helen, who becomes Helen of Troy, although at this point she's Helen of Sparta. Not sure what the timeline is exactly. So Castor, the mortal brother of Pollux, taught him tactics and swordsmanship. And archery is taught by Teutarus, the Scythian, and the Scythians were very famously very, very good archers. Or possibly Eurytus, king of Oechalia, was the archery teacher. And Ortelicus, son of Hermes, king of Thebes, and grandfather of Odysseus, apparently taught him wrestling. And another son of Hermes, Harpalycus, taught boxing. And finally, Eumolpus, a son of Poseidon, taught music and possibly initiated Heracles into the Eleusinian mysteries. And Linus, son of Apollo, and the muse Calliope, the muse of poetry, taught literature. He quite literally had the best teachers. But he was not a perfect student, unfortunately. One day Eumolpus had to leave, and he said, "Don't worry, Alcaeus, Linus will take over my lessons." But Linus had a different way of teaching the lyre, and he and poor old little Heracles didn't really get on. And you can kind of get the idea that Heracles was getting very, very frustrated. That's how Eumolpus did it. And Linus is saying, "No, you're hopeless. Do it my way." He says, "No, you're a stubborn little boy." And Heracles hits him with his lyre. And unfortunately, Heracles is incredibly strong and kills him. Linus is dead. And Heracles is actually put on trial. His trial is apparently conducted by Rhadamanthus. You will have seen him in the underworld. And he concludes that, yes, Alcaeus did kill Linus, but Alcaeus was responding to forcible resistance from an aggressor and so is acquitted of murder. And thus, Hercules or Alcaeus doesn't get exiled or otherwise punished for his crime of killing Linus. However, he is now sent off by his father to a ranch, far away from everyone else, where he can hopefully learn to control his strength and ability. Heracles is sent to work on the ranch until his 18th birthday, and it's possible that while he was there, he actually met Chiron the centaur. Chiron is a very famous teacher of heroes. He taught Achilles, Asclepius, who's a god of medicine, Jason, Peleus, father of Achilles, Aeneas, who is in the Aeneid, Actaeon is another hero, Phoenix, Perseus, Theseus. All of these are names you'll probably have heard. And so it kind of becomes this idea that a hero myth rite of passage is getting taught by Chiron. If you want to know more about Chiron, I'll up on the website because how their story ends isn't particularly nice. But how he's a good centaur when all the other centaurs are kind of horrible is quite an interesting story. Finally, when he was 18, Heracles, now known more probably as Heracles than Alcaius, left the ranch. So apparently he was 4 cubits tall, and the ancient cubit was a measure from the tip of your middle finger to your elbow. And so an ancient Greek cubit, you can imagine it probably changed with each person, but it was roughly 46 centimetres or 18 inches. So Heracles is calculated to be about 1.84 metres tall or 6 foot. And given that the average height around the time when he's meant to live, let's say around 1250 BCE, was about 5'4" or 1.64 metres, he was a big un. He liked to sleep under the stars while hunting. He was an excellent aim with his bow and arrow. His favourite meal was meat and barley cakes, simple fare but tasty. He thought vultures were the most honourable birds because vultures don't attack any living thing, they only eat what is already dead. And he was never known to start a quarrel, but he gave as good as he got if someone started with him. You might say he might not have started, but he definitely finished arguments. And we'll definitely see that coming up later. In his story, he goes on to have lots more adventures before his most famous adventures, the 12 tasks, which we will look at later. Again, I've illustrated a couple of those, which are quite interesting. There's another lion, by the way, and those can be quite illustrative. For now, think, what kind of person has he been taught to be? What kind of person has he grown up to be? How is he portrayed to us through his upbringing? And think about also what kind of effect that's going to have on him as he grows up. Our second area of study is the Greek representations of Heracles in art. Think about what kind of art we're looking at here. What do these pieces of art show? How do they depict him? And in your packs, you've got the 2 images. Here's the first one. This source is a marble statue of Heracles, which is in the Vatican in Rome, and it's in fact a Roman copy of a Greek statue. So let's think, what type of art is it? Well, first of all, it is a marble statue. It shows a well-developed naked man, bearded, holding a club. He is leaning on it with his right hand and holding a lion skin, or how rather, he has the lion skin draped over his left arm. They're both symbols of Heracles. And he's standing in quite a relaxed position, leaning on the club. So what does that do in order to depict him in a certain way? Well, first of all, he's a well-developed naked man. He's strong. We can clearly see those muscles from here. He is bearded, and that tends to mean he's older and thus probably wiser. He is clearly confident in his strength. The way he leans on his club reminds us that he is basically using his brute strength as his main set of forces. And he's also got his trophy, the lion's skin, which proves his strength. And his relaxed stance shows that he is confident in himself and his abilities. In this next source, first of all, we're going to need to annotate the characters. So the source itself is a red figure stamnos, a sort of storage jar. And it's apparently by the Berlin painter. He didn't live in Berlin. It's just where those paintings were found, I think, from around 480-470 BCE. And it's now in the Louvre in Paris. So let's see who we've got. Well, we can see Athene because look, she's got the tasselled aegis around her neck. So that's clearly the goddess Athene. We've also got serpents, which are right in the middle of the image. And there are 2. Their heads going in different directions. We've also got 2 boys, and boy 1 is grabbing the serpent. So yes, you've guessed it, that is the story about the serpent sent by Hera. And that's clearly Alcaius or Heracles. And there's another boy. Boy 2 is scared. He climbs into his mother's arms. And his mother is Alcmene, which means that this chap over here is probably the father, Amphitryon. And yes, I know they don't look anything like babies. They're basically very small grown adults. Art develops over time, guys. Give them a break, all right? And yes, it's not on a shield, but, you know, poetic license, story license. In any case, this is that very famous story The type of sauce this is a decorative storage jar, which tells us that the ancient Greeks did like to have myths of their heroes just on things that were everyday items around the house. Although this is quite a nice storage jar, might be a bit more of a something you keep in the house where people can see it rather than you just use somewhere no one will. What it shows is a famous scene in Heracles' boyhood, where he strangles the snake sent by Hera to kill him in the cradle. And how he's being depicted here, well, again, he is strong and brave, especially compared with his mortal twin, Iphicles, who is basically turning and climbing into his mother's arms. He's also shown as wise and clever. He knows what to do with the snakes. And also, look, there's Athene. If you're wondering why she was there instead of Hera, she is basically there with her hand. Note how it hovers over his head as if to congratulate him or to tap him on the head, say, well done. She's there to represent his wisdom or cleverness, even at this early age. And finally, he is a prodigy, a very special child. So he is probably from a god. Not every child will be able to strangle some snakes that happened to come and attack it in the cradle. Next, we're going to look at our first prescribed source. And this is a short piece of poetry called the Homeric Hymn to Heracles the Lion-Hearted. Bit of a tongue twister. Now, these Homeric hymns, as we saw in the Journey to the Underworld unit, if you've done that one already, we saw that these are meant to have been, I don't want to say written, composed and then written down later by someone else. Composed by Homer, the same author as the Iliad and the Odyssey. They certainly have characteristics that make people think that they are composed by Homer, and they're probably from around the same time. So what we're going to do is we're going to annotate this source, which you should have a copy of, although it's also on the next slide, to show how the hero has been depicted by the poet Homer. So we've already looked at how he's been depicted in his stories of his growing up and how he's been depicted in some popular art. Now we're going to see how he is depicted in literature. Heracles, Zeus's son, I will celebrate, who, greatest and best of those on earth, was born in Thebes' beautiful places, Alcmene having slept with the black-clouded son of Cronos. At one time, by lands and seas impossible to count he wandered, sent away by Lord Eurystheus. Many things he did that were reckless, many things he suffered. Now, however, in the beautiful abode of snowy Olympus he dwells, enjoying himself with beautiful ankled Hebe. Farewell, Lord Zeus' son, grant both excellence and happiness. Yes, that's all we're going to look at. So, we've got here, as you probably have noticed, basically the story of Heracles. Now, I'm going to apologise for my horrific annotations here. I did these while we were doing it on the board last year, but I will talk through them. So, overall, this poem is kind of creating a link between mankind and the gods, because Heracles represents both. So let's go through it. Heracles, Zeus's son, not Amphitryon. Son of Zeus is a patronym, means name of the father. It's a commonly used type of epithet, a descriptive bit of text or adjectival bit of text, descriptive, that describes the person, and a patronym is often used. It's actually where often we've got surnames from, like mine, Jenkinson. So, I will celebrate who? Greatest and best of those on earth. Not just greatest, but also best. And this is his reputation, his repetitive reputation, you could say. He is greatest and best of those on earth. He is mortal, but he's the best of all mortals. Was born in Thebes' beautiful places. That just tells us where his story is first located, Thebes. Alcmene having slept with the black-clouded son of Cronos. So Alcmene, we know, was his mother. She slept with the black-clouded, there's another epithet to describe the son of Cronos, which is a patronym. And this patronym is being used instead of the actual name of the character, who is, of course, Zeus. It adds interest to the text not to just give the same name again. We already had the word Zeus in the very first line. Black-clouded is to do with him being the god of, who uses thunder and storms to express when he is upset. And son of Cronos, I'm sure by now you know the story of his birth. Then we have apparently an actual colon that tells us that the story is now going to continue in a slightly different vein. Now we're talking about Heracles. At one time, by lands and seas impossible to count, he travels a lot, he wandered, and he is sent away by Lord Eurystheus. So, sent away by Lord Eurystheus, he wandered. Basically, this is him being sent off to do the 12 labours. There were originally 10 and they turned into 12, and they are all around the area of known world that there was at that time. And Lord Eurystheus, that's the little boy, the tiny early child of Nicippe, who was born to be king instead of Heracles. Remember when Hera tricked Zeus? Many things he did that were reckless. Oh, okay. So when we say someone is reckless, we say that they're a bit of a chancer, they're dangerous, they're stupid, they're human, maybe? Brave, but stupid, we might say, because clearly you're going to die if you do these things. If you're reckless, you don't often think about what you're about to do. Then the poet says, many things he suffered. And that tells us that he was doing reckless things, but he was also suffering at the same time. And we know that he is repenting because of murdering his whole family, which was technically Hera's fault. And this is the purification of his miasma. Now, however, in the beautiful abode of snowy Olympus he dwells. Hey, he's done all right. Even though he was mortal, he now lives on Olympus. He has in fact been deified. I did say it right at the start that he was worshipped as a god. And he, the son of Zeus, goes up to Olympus and lives there and is given a new wife, beautiful ankled Hebe. Hebe is a goddess of youth, and so she's very beautiful, and she's a lovely reward for him for having suffered all this time. The poet finally signs off by saying, farewell, Lord, Zeus's son, grant both excellence and happiness. It's almost like a little prayer. You are someone we look up to, and please give us excellence and happiness that you now have. So, as I said, he is the link between mankind and the gods. And this is why Heracles is so looked up to by both the ancient Greeks and the Romans. He is a local boy done good. He is a mortal who has risen to the status of a god.